Hi everyone, welcome to the G8 Social Investment Task Force and its implications for social entrepreneur startups. I'm Constanza from Unlimited, and I have here with me Cliff, CEO of Unlimited, which will be delivering the webinar for you. We will just wait a couple more minutes, if that's all right for you, so that we have everybody in. So we'll be getting back in a couple of minutes. Hi everyone, again. My name is Constanza and welcome to the G8 Social Investment Task Force and its implications for social entrepreneur startups. I'm from Unlimited and this is a webinar in the series of, that GSEN is organizing, and GSEN is a project launched by Unlimited and it's a global network for organizations that support social entrepreneurs. I have here with me Cliff Pryor that heads Unlimited. And he'll be talking about the outcomes of the task force. And just to give you a bit of context, the Social Impact Investment Task Force was announced by Prime Minister David Cameron at the G8 Social Impact Investment Forum in June 2013. And it aims to catalyze the development of the social impact investment market. So there was a few working groups, and Cliff Pryor chaired the mission alignment one, and you'll be hearing from him the implications that come with the conclusions of the task force. Just before we move to the presentation itself, a bit of housekeeping. So Cliff will be making a presentation of around 40 minutes, and then you will have time for questions. So if you have a question, please type in the chat box, and I'll collect them and read them out. We will also be recording the webinar, so we will afterwards send you that alongside with the PowerPoint itself. So we're aiming to finish at 12:30 UK time, and that's it. Over to Cliff.
Thanks very much, Constanza, and welcome everyone. So yeah, the Impact Investment, the Invisible Heart of Markets, as it's been called, the report from the Social Impact Investment Task Force. I'm going to be focusing on the implications that it has for social startups and for the people and intermediary organizations who support them. So that's going to be the take on this. And I'll also touch a little bit, depending quite who joins, on the implications for developing world countries, if anybody joins who comes from that background. So first of all, to say just what a mammoth job this was. It's incredibly ambitious. It's a task force trying to catalyse a global market in impact investment. Ronnie Cohen chaired it. Ronnie Cohen's the founder of venture capital in the UK, and he's now, over the last 10 years, been really the spearhead of the social impact investment movement here. We had engagement from 7 of the G8 countries. You'll understand that Russia wasn't exactly in the frame, with the EU, and also Australia joined because they were so keen to progress this agenda. As well as the high-level main task force, it had 8 national advisory bodies and 4 specific working groups. They covered asset allocation, so how investors allocate their assets across different asset classes, impact assessment, how you measure the impact that's created, international development, which I'll touch on if we have anybody from that sort of area, and also mission alignment, which was the working group that I chaired, which was focused on profit with purpose business models, a new class of social mission organisation. It was all launched on the 15th of September, 8, well, I'd say simultaneous launches, but they were the same time but in different time zones, so it sort of cycled around the world. And the overall aim is to bring to bear $1 trillion of private corporate investment for social and environmental impact, so hugely ambitious. Let's give you the top level of the task force recommendations, and as Constanza mentioned, these slides will be available afterwards, so and this one's got a lot of detail on it. So starting point was just to have ways of measuring impact objectives and tracking their achievement, and for governments to set out what their impact objectives are, what they want to do about education, what they want to do about healthcare and so on. Secondly, for investors, commercial investors tend to look at risk and return. The more risk, the higher return they want. And what this report is saying is bring in the concept of impact. So you look at 3 things now: risk, return, and social impact. Fiduciary responsibilities of trustees. Now this is a rather interesting one, in that it sounds a little bit sort of in the background and maybe not quite as significant as the others, but in many countries, in fact I'd say in the majority of countries we looked at, the trustees of pension funds, insurance funds, charitable endowments are not allowed to consider the social benefit of how they invest their assets. They can only look at the financial return. And this really hinders social investment. So the sorts of people who are most minded to invest in social ventures are actually the people often most inhibited from doing so. We're changing that. They're looking at governments putting impact first in the way they commission public services. They're looking at the idea of setting up an impact investment wholesale bank in each country. That's happened in the UK with Big Society Capital, using unclaimed banking assets, dormant accounts that people have forgotten about for decades, and that's really driving the sector now. They're looking at boosting social sector organisational capacity. Governments, foundations, having capacity building grants, get the intermediaries going and also get the individual social enterprises going. And giving this concept of profit with purpose businesses, commercial businesses, profit distributing businesses, the ability to lock in social mission. I'll come back in much more detail on that in a minute. to support how impact investment can work for international development, and included in that the idea of creating an impact finance facility to bring in early stage capital. That's really important because early stage is higher risk, it's more difficult for commercial investors to have a return, so if you can create a facility to incentivize that, and that might mean that we get that sort of early stage investment into social ventures in developing world as well as in the more developed countries, which would be brilliant. The ones in blue there are the ones that I think are most relevant to startup social entrepreneurs and to the organizations that support them. Let's have a look at the specific area of this profit with purpose business concept. Now, all the reports, including the profit with purpose business one, will be on the main website, socialimpactinvestment.org, but it's not yet because it's still being designed. And for the moment, you can pick it up on Unlimited's website, and you can also find a whole set of case studies on our website as well. So those codes there, you can access all that through unlimited.org.uk and navigate your way through to it. So, okay, what's the problem we want to solve? In a lot of countries now, there are many social startups, but so few actually get to scale. So few get the investment they need to get to scale. And the critical pinch points, the bottlenecks, are at the very early stage and where a venture is ready for transformative growth, really massive growth. And these are both very risky stages. And if there's high risk, you need high return, and that really means you need equity investment. You need an investment where you get a capital return as well as just, for example, if it's a loan, you just get an interest rate. You would have to have a crazily high interest rate to cover the risk on these early stage ventures. And in many countries, the idea of profit distribution and social mission are seen as just completely incompatible. This is a profound cultural issue which has become embedded in the regulations that different countries put up. In many cultures, people do not trust anything that makes profit to be social. So what we're trying to do here is build trust, give confidence that something that says it's social mission and also profit distributing will actually stick to its social mission and deliver it for the long term. So that's the challenge. Can we devise this model for social ventures which distribute profit but lock in their social mission some other sort of way? And how can we get that accepted against these cultural norms? So just look at it the other way. What about the opportunity that we're trying to tap? And what we see, certainly in the UK now, is a huge wave of entrepreneurs who want to go social. In the last survey that we were involved with, the RBS tracker, big population level survey, of people who wish to start up a new enterprise, 1 in 5 said it would be a fully social enterprise. And of the other 80%, 2/3 said that they wanted to achieve a social or environmental benefit in the course of their commercial business. So this is a huge number. In the UK, we reckon 100,000 people a year starting enterprises for social mission. And most of those entrepreneurs, they want to use just the standard ways of doing these things. The thing that people are most familiar with is a company limited by shares. Investors are familiar with it, entrepreneurs are familiar with it, you stay in control, and we know from UK practice that angel investors, early stage investors, are prepared to invest in social ventures if they can see a realistic return, if they can see an equity return. So the opportunity challenge is, can we devise a model that draws those entrepreneurs in to committing to social mission, giving confidence to the social stakeholders, without hobbling their ability to make profit, attract equity investment, be real enterprises. So it's creating the confidence to be a real enterprise and creating the confidence to be really social and stay social. So if we look at the sort of spectrum from non-profits through to businesses. You'll see here we've got grant-based organisations on the left, sustainable businesses on the right. We haven't even bothered with unsustainable evil businesses, they're off the page. So we go through from charities that don't trade, charities that do trade, but the profits are internally distributed, social and solidarity enterprises, profit constrained, maybe allowed to distribute a bit of profit but not all of it. And then the new kid on the block, this new idea we've got, profit with purpose businesses, locking in social mission but fully profit distributing. And then there's another group, there's quite a lot, and this is particularly the case in America, businesses that are really keen to establish that they're going to deliver social impact, but they're not prepared to lock it in for the long term. And so that's right at the extreme of our range. And where we focus is that new profit with purpose business concept. And we've also had an eye to social enterprise on the one side and these businesses that seek impact but don't lock it in on the other. So some of our recommendations cover them as well. So, as I was mentioning, most countries see profit and social impact as, they're in opposition to each other. They're at opposite ends of a spectrum. Actually, when you think about it, these are completely different dimensions. There are non-profits that achieve very little, and there are for-profit organisations that achieve huge social benefit. So what happens if you see them as separate dimensions and you get a grid going? So here we are. On the vertical axis here, we've got what's your commitment to social impact? Is it number one? It's your primary commitment. It's your overriding object. You will achieve this. Or maybe you want to create it, but you're not putting it first. Or maybe you're just achieving the legal minimum that's allowed in your country. And on the horizontal axis, how much profit distribution is allowed? None, internal only, partially limited, or you can distribute as much profit as you can make. And looked at that way, this profit with purpose business concept is right in the top right-hand corner. It's fully committed to social impact, but it's able to distribute profit without restriction. And what that means is it can attract risk investment to grow its business. And that's why we're focusing on this. We had a four-step journey on getting to profit with purpose business. First of all, just defining what the characteristics were, what this was about. Secondly, describing an adequate legal basis for it to allow it to happen in the country and having a look at the current legal position and what would be the next step. Thirdly, identifying the sort of policy and market measures that could make it fly in each country. And finally, to identify what are the starting points for implementation. What's the next best step? What examples can we give to encourage rapid movement? But taking the first of those, the characteristics, we looked at a number of ways of doing this and came to the idea of the stool with three legs. I think in many countries there's this thing that a stool stands on three legs. You try and have one or two and it's unstable. Have three and it's stable. Each leg reinforces the other. So our three are intent, duties, and reporting. So the intention is to do good. The duty is it gives itself a duty to do that good. It binds itself into it. And thirdly, it shows that it's actually doing good by reporting to an accredited standard and being transparent. So a profit with purpose business is one that seeks, commits to, and creates and shows its social impact. And just to put that into the grid that we're using, intent to commit a social purpose, so that would go into company articles, for example, name the social purpose in the articles of the company. The duties, the fiduciary duties of directors, so if you've got a social object, that's just as important to strive for as your financial object. And finally, the reporting, an accredited standard of reporting and transparency about not just the intention that you had, but your wider environmental impact, social impact, governance impact. What we didn't want here was a company that said, look at these wonderful solar lanterns, and didn't mention that it was using child labour in Indonesia. We didn't want to just focus on the chosen impact. Here in the UK, we've had a number of companies which have delivered public services, but without that fully transparent approach. So let's just have a look at how that might work for different stakeholders, what are the benefits of this for the different stakeholders. And here we go. So for social entrepreneurs, the benefits of this. So if you're an entrepreneur doing a for-profit business and you're really committed to social mission, it allows you to identify yourself, to have this social brand. It allows you to stay true to your social mission. It protects your legacy as the founder. And it allows you to secure investment, reasonable risk-adjusted equity investment, because you are still a profit-distributing venture. For investors, well, there's social investors and commercial investors. For the social investors, now you can identify who's eligible. You can prevent changes to the mission. You can monitor performance on the social mission. And you can have an exit from your investment without compromising the mission because you know it's fully locked in. If you're a commercial investor, you want an equity level of return. And that's what this model does, because it's a fully profit distributing model. And then for beneficiaries and consumers, you've got a lot more to buy if you want to buy social. It draws businesses generally towards the social, and we believe that this will lead to a higher level of impact than previously. Okay, there's been some comments about the quality of sound, so we're just going to rearrange things a little bit so that we can get the best sound quality possible, and we're hoping that this is now going to be better, and I think it is. Yeah. Okay. Okay. And then right down at the bottom, we've got some benefits for regulators and policymakers, and we believe that an international framework, a standard system across countries, makes it a lot easier. Global recognition of best practice, local application of clear international principles. It means that those big international investors don't have to go into extensive, expensive due diligence case by case. They've got a single system. So that's the objective. How are we putting this together? Well, on intent, the idea is to put the social objectives into the articles, and some countries already allow this. In the UK, it's perfectly possible. In the US, there's the benefit corporation movement, which is spreading across states. And we know that in Canada, France, Italy, and Japan, there are new legal legislative measures already underway. In terms of duties, very few, if any, countries explicitly allow directors to have a duty to strive for social as well as financial objects. And this is the biggest change that would be desirable. In practice, who's going to sue? But it would be really good to have clarity on that. And then on reporting, we think the best system that we've seen in the world, around the world, is the B-Lab system. It has an accredited standard. You have to reapply periodically, so you have to keep demonstrating that you are still social. It requires broader transparency as well as your reporting on your specific object, and it's all backed up by the international reporting system from IRIS, the Global Impact Investment system. In South America, there's Sistema B, which has very similar sort of setup and is very equivalent. So in our package, what we've got in the report is the framework, it's intent, duties and reporting. We've got legal backing. We've got a draft international piece of legislation for countries to pick up and adopt, calling it the Clark Bill, named after the guy who wrote it. and it allows for countries that don't even have a social enterprise model as yet, and those that want to go further into this profit with purpose business. It's a really fantastic piece of work, making it much easier for activists in each country to lobby their legislators. Look, here it is. This is an international standard piece of law. And then on reporting, the BLAB system, which is expanding globally. We did a detailed legal analysis thanks to pro bono support from ORIC through Trust Law Connect. Each of the 8 countries, we know where their starting point is, and we're going to be writing direct to people in those countries to say, look, this is how the analysis comes out. This is the sort of steps that this particular country could take. Just to have a look at that piece of legislation in some detail. What it does is it identifies what needs to be in your country's legal system in order for social mission business to prosper. It defines the characteristics. It offers some optional measures. It encourages methods of government support and promotion. And it also touches on that wider frame of businesses that seek impact but don't want to lock it in, and just how much could apply to them. It's a complete document with advisory notes applicable in any country law. It doesn't matter whether you've got a case law tradition or a civil code tradition, making it, as I say, much, much easier for legislators to act. So, this business of country starting points. So, for the G8 countries, we do actually have these characteristics identified, and as I say, we'll be writing individually to folk in each country on this. But if you're looking at this from another country, here's what we saw as most important. That the starting point is, can you at least allow a social mission to be a secondary object in your company law? Without that, you're really stuck. So that's absolutely number one. And most countries actually do have that. There are some exceptions, and that includes actually some G8 countries. There were 3 of the G8 countries who currently can't do that. But what we'd really want is to allow social mission to be a primary object in your company law, and that's where you can really lock in the social. And there's only 2 countries that currently allow for that. What about legal precedents? Because it's one thing having a piece of law, but how does it interact with all the other laws in your country? And you need some case examples or clarity in your civil code. Next, what about the mechanisms that embed social purpose in practice? Are they easy to use? Are they accessible? Is there local confidence in it, familiarity in it? Be nice if there were specific legal forms for profit with purpose business or for social enterprise. Branding matters a lot. This is something that we heard very much from Germany, that simply having a specific legal form, even though you could do a lot of this already, but having a specific branded legal form would encourage development. And finally, and the toughest one, is social purpose included in the fiduciary duties of directors and enforceable? And this is the one that is least present across the world. So next steps, I would say for people across the world, using the momentum of this, it's a fantastic opportunity. It's got to have very high profile. It's international. It's got a G8 stamp of approval. It makes it an easy opportunity to push this agenda in your country. The legal backing, this Clark bill, it's a very high quality report by the world's leading lawyer in the field. Again, it's a really credible piece to push into your country's legislators. Bringing the BLAB system into your country, again, having this reporting standard really makes a difference, builds confidence, builds market confidence, investor confidence, customer confidence. And it is quite startling when you think that there is no current practice across social enterprise or even across charities in how you report on your overall impact. Many social organizations report on their intended impact, but so few report on their overall impact. So they may be doing really good on healthcare,
but at the cost of burning a huge amount of carbon. And you just don't know at the moment. And for long-term public confidence, that broader reporting is really important. What's your country's starting point? What's already in place? What's the most important next step? Case studies. We've included a big case study list of intermediaries, individual enterprises, investors, things that have demonstrated success. And backing you up, we'll be writing to all of the Global Social Entrepreneurship Network members with this report and with suggestions on how they might want to use it if this is relevant to them in their country. In the UK, we'll be using the momentum. We will be talking to government about the fiduciary duty issue, although don't want to make such a big fuss about it because, what shareholder is ever going to sue a director for achieving a social object? It's hard to imagine. On reporting, BLAB UK is already in development, and Unlimited is hoping to assist that. And in terms of the UK starting point, the Big Venture Challenge that Unlimited has been running with Big Lottery Fund support has already been working on bespoke versions of profit with purpose business. Now hopefully we'll have a systematic standard approach, and that should speed things up a lot. And meanwhile, out of that Big Venture Challenge, we've demonstrated the success of it. The ventures grow faster, they achieve more impact, they attract investment, commercial angel investors come into the market. This is a wonderful scheme and has considerable research evidence behind it now. So that's what we're doing in the UK, and just want to touch on some of the other recommendations that would be relevant to intermediaries supporting startup social entrepreneurs. And I'm going to take these under two categories. One is, what can market builders do? What can governments do in terms of building a market? And the recommendations in the report include some really useful stuff, including money, providing capability building grants, so important at this early stage. This business of improving impact entrepreneurs' access to capital by creating the profit with purpose business form. If you've got startup business support in your country, does it include support to social impact oriented organizations? If not, why not? Let's get that going. There are recommendations about celebrating success, offering rewards for innovation, about tax incentives, about the creation of a social investment wholesaler like Big Society Capital, and looking at early stage support to the specialists, including the intermediaries, including people like the GSEN members, and making sure that there are the right tax and regulatory incentives for impact investors, something that's been achieved over the last year in the UK. And then there's a second set, recommendations to governments as stewards of the market, and that's where these legal forms, the profit with business legal form comes in, and making sure that regulations don't block social sector organisations from generating revenues through trading. It is astonishing how many countries still have that block. All of these recommendations and more are in the main task force report. I've just come back to the core of this, that profit and social purpose, bringing these together, this is a huge cultural challenge. There's potential, though, if we can give confidence that profit and social purpose can live together. There's the potential for massive benefit, because once you do that, you allow the whole panoply of commercial investment opportunities to come in. Personally, I see great entrepreneurs, great social business models hobbled by this inability to get that early stage growth finance. And if we can get past that, then I think we can achieve a huge amount for the poor and the disadvantaged, which is what this is all about. We've tried in this model to create really solid mechanisms, these three legs of the stool, to hold social mission without hobbling the enterprise. We want to lock in the social mission of entrepreneurs without hobbling their enterprise. We want to attract entrepreneurs who might have gone commercial into social mission. We want social businesses to be not just a tiny little niche, but a really significant chunk of the economy of the UK and hopefully of other countries in the world too. And this is a great opportunity because of the high level support. And just to indicate the sort of support that this has been getting, how about a quote from the Pope? This is a pretty unusual thing to get in any sort of economic argument. And backing, as you'll see down the bottom there, from 8 countries plus the EU. It's a real opportunity to build momentum in the UK, in all the G8 countries, and I think well beyond them too. Okay, so that's the end of what I've got to say. I hope that was audible, and interested in hearing any questions and challenges on this. And I should say, this certainly has been challenged during the course of writing the report. So we've got some questions up there.
Thank you very much, Cliff, for the presentation. So we now have a few minutes for some questions, and we already have one question, and it reads, isn't this what income tax used to be about?
Now, I'm puzzled by this because income tax is a tax on everybody, whether you're doing good or doing bad. And what we're trying to do here is get more enterprises doing social good and committing to social good for the long term. So I'm not sure quite how this this relates to income tax. I can see how it might relate, for example, to corporation tax or the tax breaks that investors get for startups. At the moment, in most developed countries have tax breaks for investors to back new startups. What we want is this to be sort of preferentially skewed to startups that are going to go social and stay social. But maybe, Susan, maybe I'm missing your question, so maybe if you want to add a bit more detail to the question, then I can answer it better. Okay. So, next question is, did the task force touch on how to keep angel investors engaged in social investment as well as how? So what we looked at was what do we know about what angel investors want? And the experience from the Big Venture Challenge in the UK has told us a lot about that. They want to invest for financial return on a reasonable risk return basis. They love the candidates being filtered by an organisation that they have some confidence in. Do they worry over much about the social mission? Well, the evidence that we have in the UK is initially not particularly, although social mission can be a useful differentiator in a crowded market, so maybe that's a bit of a cachet. But what we find over time is that some of those commercially minded investors preferentially start to look at social because they just enjoy working with them. And so that's our experience. But what we're trying to do here is say these are fully profit distributing businesses. They are proper businesses. You can invest in them commercially. They are committed to achieving social good. That's what we're about.
Okay, so we have another question. Do you think that the task force work would be able to push impact investors to move across borders as far as actually they invest in their own country or sometimes only in development countries?
Well, we certainly think that having an international framework for profit with purpose businesses and an internationally understood framework for impact reporting and the sort of system that's needed for it, that should make it easier for investors to work cross-border. Within Europe specifically, and I see the question has come from somebody in Italy, within Europe there is now an EU-level accreditation system for impact investors, social impact investors, both in terms of where they raise money from and how they disperse their investments. That's pretty new. I don't think the take-up has been huge yet, but that across Europe could make quite a difference. There are a lot of investors, impact investors, who focus on international development. I think it's going to take longer for developing world countries to be able to credibly adopt the sort of legal system that we're suggesting, because in many of those countries the legal framework is pretty weak, or access to legal justice is difficult. So it's going to be more challenging there. But again, I think the reporting system, that's probably the spearhead for developing countries, because that can be adopted anywhere.
We've got a clarification regarding the first question that was asked, and the question was, isn't this what income tax used to be about? And the clarification says, governments use tax to do social good, hospitals, schools, welfare, roads, in the past.
Yes, okay, and governments then use that tax in one of two different ways. Either they spend it through government agencies, so government hire staff and it employs the doctors and the teachers and so on, and that's common in some countries. And in other countries, governments use that tax money to achieve social goods through other organisations. In the UK, we've got a model that's now pretty mixed. So we have commercial outsourcing companies doing public service work. We've got direct government stuff, and we've also got social sector. The social sector organisations are repeatedly outcompeted by the commercial ones, which, whilst they may, they'll fulfil the contract, but they've got no long-term commitment to social value, and very often no internal culture of social value either, which can impact on quality to the beneficiaries. What I would love to see is a mechanism that allows organisations that are fully committed to social mission to be able to outcompete those commercial companies that don't have a social mission, so that the public can rely more on the culture and intent of those organisations, not just on the particular contract that they've signed today. So, yeah, some countries have all direct provision through government, and that raises a different issue. And what we heard out of one country where there's been very little change in who provides public services for decades now is, well, it's all very efficient, it's all pretty good, but there's no innovation, because there are no new enterprises coming in, there are no new models coming in. And again, that's where I think this could work in those kinds of countries.
Great, thank you, Cliff. We have another question. You can keep that coming as we still have time. And the question says, can or how can existing organizations or corporates adopt this framework?
Great question. So in the UK, where the legal framework is already friendly to this, the key issue is the reporting to an accredited standard. And I mentioned earlier, BLab UK is being created by a small group of people in the UK, and we think that will probably go live next year. It is already possible, if you're a commercial organisation that wants to commit to social value, you can already register through the US BLab system. The US BLab system is open to all comers from all countries, and I think I'm right in saying there's around about 1,000 accredited through the B Corp system in the US at the moment, but there's many times more who have looked at the self-diagnostic framework for being a social purpose business, a profit with purpose business, and have used that to help them improve their internal practices. So you can use it just to get yourself a bit better, or you can use it to accredit, and hopefully by next year you'll be able to do it through a UK agency as well.
Okay. The next question reads, startups tend to lack capacity. Will locking in their impact add to their ever-growing to-do list? Do you think their focus needs to be on growing their business at the startup stage and later think of mission lock?
Yeah, this is a challenge that we particularly had from American colleagues who said, look, if you've got a really great idea and there are millions of people who could benefit from it, why slow yourself down by locking in a social mission? And what about the circumstance that you discover actually your first idea didn't really work? You need to change the business model, and the social mission is now different to the original one. So maybe you thought an example was given of solar lanterns. maybe you thought you would sell direct to the poorest. And what you found was that business model didn't stack up. You needed to sell to the next income level above that in order to generate sufficient profits to be able to sell cheaply to the very poorest. And a particular organisation had drawn its social objectives too tightly and was held back in its progress. So in the report, in the detail of the report, we have a discussion about how specific or broad to make your social mission. It needs to be specific enough that people know what you're about. On the other hand, you don't want to be obsolete in 3 years' time because somebody's come along with something else. So there's a question of exactly how broad you make the mission. It also you could finesse the mission. You could apply to the accrediting body in your country for consent to change the mission. That's already possible for charities, for example. But focusing on growing your startup business, there are many sectors where the buyers want to know that you are properly social. And a really good example of that is healthcare and health information, health informatics. As this particular questioner will know, we've supported at Unlimited an outfit called Patients Know Best, which is a health informatics thing. It puts all your health records on your smartphone or your PC. And they've committed that only you as the patient will have the key to unlock your data, whereas the commercial competitors want to sell on your data. Now, actually, it turns out that patients want to hold their own data. Doctors don't want the health data sold. So actually, there is a market advantage in taking on this particular social objective. I think there are many areas where the buyers and the beneficiaries will have so much more trust in a social organization that is open and transparent about what it's achieving, that it will actually make the business do better.
Thank you, Cliff. We will wait a couple minutes to see if there are any more questions, as we still have time. So if you have any question, you can type it in the chat.
Could also just whilst we're waiting, we've got a number of people here. It would be great if people just sort of typed in yes, no, or maybe. Do you think this is really a good plan? Maybe it's good, but you got some questions. Or no, you think this is the wrong thing to do. Just type in yes, maybe, or no, and we'll have a little look at what people are thinking. Okay, this is looking much clearer than the Scottish referendum. Yeah, I think we've got a convincing yes vote here, but 3 people have got some caveats, and yeah, seeing the implementation. So, as mentioned, we've got the report currently up on the Unlimited website. It will go up in a fully designed version on the socialimpactinvestment.org website, I think by the end of this week, they're saying now. And we will be writing out to all GSEN members with the full detail.
Okay, we have another question. What will Unlimited's role be going forward?
Okay, so in Unlimited, we're already doing this through the Big Venture Challenge. We've just been doing it case by case, and we're certainly going to be looking at trying to get this more systematic approach in. We will be lobbying government on the issue of the fiduciary duties of directors, but I think that's a really long-term issue, and we certainly won't get anything pre-election. I hope that we may be supporting B-Lab UK, and one of the things I would love to do is see whether Unlimited itself could qualify in that regard, even though actually we're a charity, but there's no restriction on that, so we can see how well we do against the accreditation system, and just generally by the way we work of offering this as an opportunity for social entrepreneur startups, for investors, for intermediaries, as a new way of trying business. This is new, and whether it's really valuable, it looks valuable to me, but its real value will be decided by the market, by entrepreneurs, by investors, and by their customers.
All right, we have another question. Do you think there are enough social enterprises which are investment ready around the globe? Isn't the report too much focused on what to offer than on the demand side?
Yeah, well, my hunch on this would be that there are far more entrepreneurs around the world who want to achieve something social but are not prepared to commit themselves to a vow of poverty by creating a non-profit or a profit-restricted social enterprise. You know, it is great to see people who put their entire lives and entire careers into doing something social, but there are only so many saints in the world. And, you know, particularly for the poor, they've got to put food on the table for their family. I think if we can open this up to say, look, yeah, be an entrepreneur, be a successful entrepreneur, earn good money from your business, particularly if you're doing social. To me, at the moment, all the incentives are the wrong way around. You do bad and you can make a fortune. You do good and you'll just draw a pretty thin and unsteady salary. That's all wrong to me. We want the incentives to be for people to do good. I think there are a lot more people around, and in many countries, of course, there is no intermediate setup at the moment, or if there is an intermediate social and enterprise setup, it's beset with difficulties. You know, the government's on your back and telling you what you can and can't do, etc., etc. So I think this really opens up the opportunities. We've been doing a lot of work with partners in South and East Asia recently, and I think, you know, there the concept of doing good through enterprise is just very, very popular in a way that doing non-profit is unpopular and seen as actually corrupted by the way it's played by governments. So I think there's a lot of opportunity. It won't work everywhere because, yeah, in some countries there just aren't enough entrepreneurs. But then I look at the case, for example, of South Korea. 7 years ago, it hadn't even touched on a social economy, and now it's probably at a similar sort of place to the UK. Well, we've been doing this for 25 years. You know, countries can go very, very fast when the right mechanisms are in made.
Great, thank you, Cliff. If we have one or two more questions, we still have time. I'll just wait a minute, and if not, we'll finish.
Well, I think that's probably the end for this. Thanks very much for giving us your time and interest on this. If there's anybody looking at this or listening to it on record who is not either with Unlimited or with a GSEN member, a Global Social Entrepreneurship Network member, and you want to have access to the full detail, then, as I mentioned, you can find this on our website. You'll shortly be able to find it on the socialimpactinvestment.org website. If you have any difficulties, email us at global@unlimited.org.uk, the email on the last slide there, and we'll make sure that you get a copy direct. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you very much, Cliff, for your time too. And we will be sending you the video and the PowerPoint itself so that you can have a look later. Thank you, everyone.